we have Dr. Russell James. Dr. Russell James is the professor in the School of Financial Planning at the Texas Tech University, go Raiders, where he holds the CH Foundation Chair in Personal Financial Planning. Dr. Russell's focuses on decision-making and charitable giving, trusts and estates, and also properties. So without further ado, Dr. Russell James.
Thanks so much. Well, I do bring you greetings from Texas Tech University, which is a bit of a conflict since we did win the last football game with University of Houston. So hopefully I'll still be allowed to stay here and present. I'm going to be sharing some results from national data on returns to fundraising expenditures in Muslim nonprofits in the U.S. And these come from IRS Form 990. IRS Form 990 being the nonprofit tax form that's required of all nonprofits in the U.S., however, not required of churches, mosques, and synagogues. So this is other nonprofits. Now, when it comes to fundraising, there's lots of different opinions on what is an appropriate level of fundraising, but we're going to do a technical analysis here, specifically looking at the concept of technical efficiency. The idea being that from a maximization of net revenue, the optimal level of fundraising actually is not related to any average level of fundraising cost, but relates to the marginal returns from additional fundraising expenditures. So we're going to focus on analyzing the marginal returns. Now, the reason this is important is going along with the theme of the conference of tapping the untapped market. When you have a very high marginal return to investing, then from a technical perspective, there is underinvestment taking place in that particular category, that there is a lot of missing opportunity if you have very high returns to investments. So that's what we're going to be looking at with this research. The notion is, to the extent that you've got net marginal returns for fundraising expenditures that are positive, this is technically underinvestment because it represents a greater amount of capacity that the nonprofit organization could have. So again, not making any normative or moral statement here, simply doing a technical analysis of comparing different organizations and their level of untapped charitable contributions based upon their level of fundraising. This may be a particular issue for religiously affiliated organizations, that there may be greater concerns about, do we even need to engage in fundraising? Do we need to do any of this communications? Or is this something that the donors should do entirely without communication or participation from the nonprofit organizations and entirely on their own? So this is the data set. We're looking at about 6 years worth of data. This is for all organizations filing IRS Form 990 electronically. So we start with a little over 1 million nonprofit tax returns over that period of time. Now, so the issue is, how do we identify religiously affiliated organizations? And we'll look at that in just a moment. Actually, let me jump to that. If the name or mission statement of a nonprofit included any words or variations of words such as Muslim, Islam, or variations of these such as Islamic, then those organizations were statistically coded as Muslim organizations. Similarly, just as a matter of comparison, doing this with nonprofits that are using Christian terms or also Jewish terms. In addition to that, the IRS has a category specifically for organizations whose primary focus is religion related. And so that is a particular national taxonomy on exempt entities organization category. So that's a bit of what we were looking into. Just to give you a sense of the data, we're looking at fundraising expenditures in year one, and we're comparing that to the contributions in year two. And so we're looking at what is this relationship between spending in the prior years and the actual contributions received in the subsequent years. And so that means at a minimum, we need at least 2 years sequentially of data in all of our data sets. Now, for many of the organizations, we have 5 or 6 years worth of this data. But just to give you a feel for the kinds of organizations, the total revenue, the average was 8 million, the median was 90,000. Assets, the average is 18 million, the median is 840,000, and the average age for these organizations is 30 years, median is 24. We're looking at 2 critical issues in the data. One is total fundraising expenditures, and then later we'll focus specifically on professional fundraising services, which is essentially hiring outside fundraising consultants, often done in a capital campaign. And so this was the very simple, straightforward model. We control for the variety of organizational characteristics, such as the assets, the age, the revenue of the organization. And then we look at the predictiveness of the fundraising expenditures on subsequent years' total contributions, giving us the marginal returns for those expenditures. This is a very simple analysis, just ordinary least squares at this point. But the critical thing that we're looking at here is not just the notion of whatever religious category they might be in, but the interaction of the fundraising expenditures with the religious category, because that shows us, do these organizations of different religious affiliations, do they have higher or lower returns to their fundraising expenditures? And so the series of results here, I'll walk through these a column at a time here. So what we see in the first column is this is just looking at organizations that have a religious focus. That is, according to the IRS, their primary purpose is religious. Those organizations, as compared to the typical nonprofit organization, they actually get a higher level of return from additional fundraising expenditures. So that, in the technical sense, reflects underinvestment. The second column there shows where we are now looking at organizations that fell into any of the 3 categories, whether they used a Christian, a Jewish, or an Islamic name. And again, we see positive returns more so than in other nonprofit organizations. And then if you look at the third column, that is breaking it down among the 3 different types of religious nonprofits, religiously named nonprofits. You see first the Christian, then the Jewish, and then the Muslim. Now, one of the things to notice about this is that the returns to fundraising investments is not only higher for Muslim organizations, but it's dramatically higher than even any of the other religious named affiliated organizations. So this suggests that there is something special about nonprofit organizations that are Muslim or Islamic in the U.S., which is an underinvestment in fundraising, or you might think of it as an untapped potential for higher contributions that is untapped because of the lower amount of fundraising that's taking place. Now, there are 2 different ways you can do the analysis. The columns on the left-hand side are showing you the analysis if we include all of the organizations. The 3 columns on the right-hand side are showing that same analysis if we exclude all organizations, nonprofit organizations, doing no fundraising at all. So on the right-hand side, we're only looking at organizations reporting a positive level of fundraising expenditures, and we get essentially the same result. Critically, we see a dramatically higher marginal return to fundraising for the Islamic organizations. So untapped potential. The second investigation is to look at a very specific kind of fundraising expenditure. So many fundraising expenditures are from employees of the organization, other things that happen inside the organization, but oftentimes organizations will hire outsiders to help with the fundraising. These are professional consultants, outside consultants, and typically this will be for solicitation campaigns, other things that support the in-house fundraising. And we get something really interesting here when it comes to hiring the outside fundraising consultant that is different. What is different is, if you notice on that first column, so this is the religiously focused nonprofits, we get a much worse return for hiring the outside consultants compared to the normal or the non-religious nonprofit organization. And then if we look at the third column, notice the dramatic difference where hiring the outside consulting is a very wise, beneficial, profitable investment for Christian named nonprofit organizations and also Jewish named nonprofit organizations. And it's just the opposite for Muslim or Islamic named nonprofit organizations. Now, this is same analysis for those organizations that are involved in fundraising and those that are not. And so what this suggests is that although the additional investment in fundraising produces dramatically higher results in future contributions for Islamic nonprofit organizations, you can't solve that problem just by hiring an outsider. That, although it can work for other types of organizations, appears not to be successful in this context. So those are some of the findings. Looking at over 1 million U.S. nonprofit tax returns, they find significantly higher marginal returns from general fundraising expenditures by religious nonprofits, in particular higher returns by Islamic or Muslim nonprofits. However, this cannot be addressed by simply hiring outside professional fundraising firms, as that essentially doesn't work very well in Muslim-related nonprofit organizations. So I hope some of that has been of interest. Of course, all of the references that you're not going to read, but I have to put them up there since I did reference those things. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share those results.